Okay, so we're going to get started. We were just in executive session to discuss the employment history of some particular individuals, and no action was taken, and here we are. So the first thing I'll just mention is that our next Board of Education meeting is going to be on May 5th at 7 p.m. right here in cyberspace. And I'll also mention that our Board of Education trustee candidacy is open. We have one seat open for election. If anybody's interested in running for that seat, they should contact Ms. Platt, C. Platt at haldaneschool.org to get a petition. I have no idea when that petition is actually due. Nor do I have any idea when those elections are actually happening. However, if you're interested, we would be happy to have you along. And that's it. I'll turn it over to Dr. Benante.
Jen, can I ask a question before you go? So I wrote in the next Board of Ed meeting at 6. Is there an executive session then? On May 5th, or did I just type it in wrong?
Hold on, let me check.
No, there is an executive session that will be for the superintendent, the board meeting for the superintendent.
For the superintendent evaluation.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Okay, Dr. Benante.
Thank you, Jen, and good evening. And we have many panelists this evening. Our administrative team will be providing their monthly reports virtually this evening. So thanks to all of them for joining us. And I know they'll have some good information and news to share when we come to that part of the report. As far as our continued response to COVID-19, I did just want to draw the board's attention to some of our continued work. And last week, we finalized the grading parameters for the third quarter, and that was distributed to families. So as we went on a school closure that occurred in the middle of the third quarter. So we had some decisions to make as we transitioned from what was a very traditional environment to now this very untraditional environment, and decide what to do when it came to student grades. Just so you know, a prevailing philosophy that we tried to establish as we came up with grading parameters was to do no harm. As we spoke about last week, that this could easily become a circumstance where student access to resources can become even more discrepant given what our kids may be navigating at home with their health, their parents' health, or their access to technology or other resources. And while I think we did an outstanding job making sure all of our kids had access to Wi-Fi and had access to devices, we know that the home environments that our kids are in for one reason or another can vary pretty significantly. So when it came to grading, we wanted to make sure that we were exercising every opportunity for students to demonstrate what they've learned over the course of the third quarter, and that would be reflected in their grades. So for the fourth quarter, that's to come. We're on closure now through May 15th, which would mean the earliest we could come back to school is May 18th, because May 15th is a Friday. And honestly, I've been candid over the last few weeks with what I think is going to happen, although I try not to speculate. But I do think that there is now a lot of information through the back channels that's coming about whether or not we'll be prepared to open schools at all safely. And when you think about what we may need in mid-May to open schools when it comes to establishing perhaps some physical distancing parameters, certain cleaning protocols, face masks. When it comes to cleaning protocols and face masks, a lot of those things are not even available right now. They're on back order. So if the state were to establish that you can open, but you need to have these protocols in place and be cleaning with these materials, and certain individuals must be masked at all times. If that's what it's going to be, not just us, all school districts in the Hudson Valley region are going to have an issue with that. And I think that's becoming a realization at the state level. And I wouldn't be surprised if we hear that there's an extended closure beyond the 15th, even though we may be well on the other side of the virus by that point. So a lot to come in the coming weeks. And as Jen mentioned, the budget, the trustee election, all still to be determined. One last thing I just want to mention is that that first state aid measurement period is April 30th. We spoke about this last week. That we're hearing is going to be a more significant one, that we might see this potential reduction more loaded on the front end than anything else. And you'll hear the governor comment in his remarks about the need for federal aid at this point. So we don't have to make drastic reductions to the to school aid and in other areas. So we're paying close attention to that to see if there's a potential need for any impact. So what I said to the board last week, we'd like to adopt that budget by May 5th. It may actually behoove us to wait until the next meeting, May 19th, to do so we can see what the result of that first measurement period is and do a, just confirm those numbers before we, ask the board to adopt anything. So we can talk about that a little later in the meeting, but just some developments over the last few days or the last week since we last met. Jen, one other quick note is that the Boces budget vote and board member election is also on this week's agenda. Our board members should have received information from Boces on those matters. I just wanted to draw your attention to that. If there are any questions before you vote, now would be a good time to ask them. You're voting later in the agenda, but Anne has the background on the Boces budget and the trustee election. I can't really speak to. You received the information and the candidates are on for vote later this evening. But if there are any questions about the financials, Anne is prepared to answer those for you right now, should you have them.
Any questions? Is everybody pretty clear? Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Looks like we're good.
All right. And with that, if it's okay, Jen, we'll proceed. I have Barbara Graziano here. Barb was our lead researcher for our enrollment and facilities study and demographic study. Barb and her team have been were on campus a couple of times earlier this school year, and then have been working a lot behind the scenes to begin to draw this report to closure. I want to also just acknowledge our administrative team was really instrumental in providing the necessary information, everything from verifying enrollment data to square footage of classrooms to identifying how every space in the physical plan of Haldane, every room, which ones were shared and if so, by whom, so Barb could do her best work in doing the full enrollment and facilities analysis. So I want to thank all of the administrators. Thankfully, all of them are here tonight. And I also want to thank Megan Shields. Megan, behind the scenes, was amassing all of this information and making sure that it was formatted correctly. So in turn, we were providing quality information that was well organized back to Barb and her team. So thank you to everybody who's had their hand in this. And with that, I'm actually going to share my screen. So I have Barb's presentation. So Barb, we'll go through it. And if you can just tell me when to advance or when you want me to move along, we will. And I think our board will have some questions as we go along, if that's okay.
Okay.
All right. So let me just give me 1 minute here. A bunch of things up.
While you're doing that, I would like to just kind of back up what you said and just mention that Megan was great as far as providing us with what we needed and procuring whatever information we needed from the administrative team. And that obviously helped us in what we were doing because we have found in some cases it's called getting the needed information from the districts in order to produce a solid ballot study. So it's been a pleasure working with everyone in Haldane, and we appreciate the mutual cooperation. So with that, I'll get started. I'll just start off by giving you just a brief background on the Office of School Planning and Research at Western Suffolk Boces. We have completed more than 1,100 studies since 1985 for districts on Long Island, as well as districts in Westchester, Rockland, Orange, Putnam, Dutchess, and other New York State counties. Some local districts in closer to your area that we've worked with include Beacon City, Carmel, Croton Harmon, Garrison, North Salem, Ossining, Peekskill, and Somers. Okay. You may wonder what exactly is involved in this study. Well, we start off by researching the demographics of the district, and that would include births. We also research births at the national level, the state level, county level, all the way down to the births within the actual school district. Also, we research housing trends, looking at rates of housing turnover within the district and changes to the median prices in the district. We also gather population data, not just the numbers of residents within the district, but also looking at changes to the age structure over a period of time, changes to perhaps the ethnic breakdown within the district, as well as other resident characteristics. And then the last is non-public school, and if it applies, charter school enrollments that could changes there that could impact district enrollment. Then we look at district enrollment and analyze trends over the last 10 years. And that would include migration trends, grade to grade migration trends. Does the district tend to gain, lose, or just maintain students as one cohort moves from a certain grade to the next grade in the following year? And then the last one, there's the birth persistence analysis. This is where we look at births in a given, the number of district births in a given year and compare it to kindergarten enrollment 5 years later. And we look at the correlation there and develop a kindergarten birth ratio that then is used to estimate or project kindergarten enrollment going forward. Okay, the next one. These are some of the research sources that we utilize. Big one is the Census Bureau, as well as the New York State Department of Education, New York State Department of Health, the Office of Real Property Services, all the way down to actual school district records. Okay. Next, first we'll look at demographics within the district. This slide shows you just straight resident population over the period from 2000 through 2018. And as you can see, population within the district increased 1.4% between 2000 and 2010, followed by a small increase of 0.8% between 2010 and 2018. Okay. This slide shows you the changes to the age structure within the district over the same period, 2000 through 2017, actually. And as you can see, there's been a significant decrease in the preschool or the under 5 segment of the population from approximately 6% to approximately 4% in 2017. If you look down to in the middle, the young adult population, that's the 20 to 39 segment. There's been a decrease there from 23.5% to approximately 18.5%. However, and this we're seeing in most districts that we work with, the 65 and older segment is growing from approximately 14% in 2000 to more than 18% in 2017. And this change is reflected in the median age of the district, which has grown from 45.3 years in 2010 to 47 years in 2017. So this is an indication that the population is getting older in the district. Okay. This slide shows you birth trends within Putnam County. And as you can see, obviously, not just in, it's something we're seeing not just in Putnam County, but all over, of course, that births have been declining, and there's been a decline of, I think it's about 35% over this period of 1997 through 2017. Okay. Next one. This slide shows you births within the school district. And as you can see, there's a different trend line here. There's been some wide fluctuations in births. However, if you look at the period of 2004 through 2010, in most years, not all, but most years, births were over 50 each year. However, beginning in 2011, births dropped down to a lower level, ranging within 27 through 49 births during that period. Okay, next slide. This shows you housing sales within the district during the period of 2008 through 2018. And during that time, housing turnover was at the lowest point in 2009 when 28 home sales were recorded. However, since then, as you can see, housing turnover increased in both years up through, I think it's about 79, it's blocked out on my screen, in 2018. So housing turnover has been on the rise since that low point in 2009. And then on the next slide, you'll see that median prices were at a low in 2010 with when the median price was approximately $388,000. It has fluctuated, but overall increased since that point up to, I guess it's $508,000 in 2018. Okay, next we'll take a look at enrollment trends. Oh, before I do that, I just want to touch on, I'm often asked about the accuracy of our projections. And overall enrollment projections produced by Western Suffolk Boces generally fall within a 4% margin of error. However, you should know that there are sort of three categories of projections. The first category would be projections based on students already enrolled in the system, and those are the most reliable. The next category would be projections based on documented births, which are slightly less reliable. And then the third category would be projections based on estimates of future births. And of course, that would be the least reliable. So therefore, the most reliable projections are those calculated for the periods closest in time, particularly for the first 5-year period, because that period consists of primarily projections within those first two categories.
Can I ask a question right here?
Okay.
So my perception of one of the things that happens in the Haldane Central School District is a lot of our enrollment is driven by families migrating from into the community. So folks moving from the city in particular. Do your enrollments account for that? Because I know very few people, I mean, there are a lot of people in the Haldane Central School District whose children were not born in Putnam County.
That's where those migration ratios that I mentioned, I'm sorry, let me just take that off. Sorry. That's where those migration ratios would come in. And I just want to take a look as I recall, and I will touch on this a little bit in a later slide. The district does gain students in transition to a number of grades. So that's where that migration in would be accounted for. So in other words, we do the grade level projections based on the migration, the historical migration ratios. So in other words, if the district historically gain students as that cohort moves from first to second grade, then in the projections going forward, that migration ratio would be applied so that that would account for that in migration.
Thanks.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, it did. Thank you.
Okay. This slide, of course, shows you historical enrollment for the period 2009 through 2019, and then projected enrollment for the next 5 years. By the way, I do want to also mention the study includes 10-year projections, but for this presentation, I just included the next 5 years, just because, as I mentioned before, that is the most accurate of the projections. So especially now under the current circumstances, going beyond that 5 years will be less accurate. That being said, historically, the district lost 109 students, or approximately 12% over the last 10 years. And as you can see, we're projecting a slight decrease. Enrollment will basically remain relatively stable, but with a slight decrease of 31 students over the next 5 years. Okay, next one. This shows you the kindergarten enrollment in the district. And as you can see, historically, over the last 10 years, kindergarten enrollment peaked in 2010 with 77 students, and then dropped to a low of 31 students in 2017. And that correlates very closely if you go back and line those up with births 5 years prior. The peak birth year was 2005, which then correlated with the 2010 peak in kindergarten enrollment. And the lowest births of the historical period were in 2000, where are we here? 2000, where were we? 2007, I guess it was. Anyway, so there's a definite correlation between the births and then the kindergarten enrollment 5 years later. And going forward, we're projecting that kindergarten enrollment will range within 43 to 49 students. Okay. This just shows you the numbers and percentages by grade configuration. Historically, from 2009, the 10-year period of 2009 through 2019, each grade configuration lost between 11 students in the middle grades up to 71 students in the elementary grades. Going forward, we're projecting, again, elementary enrollment will remain fairly stable. There'll be a loss of 39 students in the middle grades and a projected loss, a gain of 19 students in the high school grades. Okay, next one. So what are some of the factors that are impacting enrollment? One are the grade-to-grade migrations, which I mentioned before. On average, the district gains or maintains students in transition to most grades. However, average losses are noted to 7th grade. And then district enrollment is also impacted by the fact that, of course, the district receives Garrison School District students who enter the district in 9th grade. So we performed an analysis of the Garrison School District enrollment in order to project the numbers of students that would be entering the district, the Haldane district, from Garrison in 9th grade. And then displacement analysis. So because the district receives those Garrison students in 9th grade, by the time a cohort gets up to 12th grade, it's larger than it was in kindergarten. So each year the district graduates more 12th grade students than it does, than are replaced with entering kindergarten students the following year. So due to that, there are displacement losses, and that is projected to be between 18 and 47 students in each of the next 5 years. Next one. All right, next we'll talk about facilities. So we'll talk about capacity, but what is capacity? The New York State Education Department defines operating capacity as the total number of students a building can reasonably and efficiently house based on the district's class size policy and the number, size, and current use of the rooms. The capacity follows New York State Education Department guidelines for new construction. And although it is not mandated that districts adhere to these guidelines for existing structures, these guidelines were used as a benchmark for determining capacity in this study. And also it's important to note that the actual enrollment by grade in each school will never conform to the available numbers of seats in each classroom. Therefore, it would be unrealistic to expect utilization levels to be at 100% of capacity. Okay, next slide. So factors contributing to capacity. One is the room size. The capacity takes into account rooms of 550 square feet or greater. So in other words, capacity does not include the cafeteria or meeting rooms or other rooms like that, or the gym, 550 or greater, unless a smaller room is used for core level instruction. The next one would be room usage. Is it used for general instruction, self-contained special education, art, music, home and career, etc.? And then another one is class size guidelines. For this analysis, a maximum class size of 18 students was applied.
Barb, can I interject there?
Sure.
And just for the board, this is an important piece. We don't have, board policy that establishes class size guidelines that we would use as a basis of this. So Barb needed some parameters in doing this work. So what I asked her to do was to take the average class size that we have now and use that as the basis for the analysis that she ran. So it was a very simple logic, but it's one we can all quickly kind of be familiar with. But she and her team needed some parameter to generate her analysis around. So take what we're currently doing and doing it. So you could certainly make the argument when you look at the facilities end of this, that if we were to have more students per class, which we could, the results would be different. So we're basing it on the average class size of 18 and applying that to the study now. I just want to make sure folks know where that number came from.
Yes.
And then what the implications.
Yeah, and it doesn't mean that there can't be more than 18 students in a class, but for purposes of this analysis, yes, exactly. We went with what is sort of the average class size for the district right now. Then the next one is required program offerings and the frequency of those offerings at each grade configuration. And then also the district current sharing practice of the facilities among the different grade configurations. So this chart shows you for the elementary school, middle school, and high school, what the operational capacity has been determined to be and what the current utilization is and what the anticipated utilization will be over the next 5 years based on the projected enrollment. So as you can see at the elementary school is basically at capacity. I mean, it's at 98% and projected to be within 89 to 96% over the next 5 years. The middle school has a little more wiggle room. They're currently at 79% capacity and projected to range within 62 to 84% capacity over the next 5 years. The high school at 88% currently and projected to be 90 to 94% over the next 5 years, which is, especially for the high school, that's high. Because generally at the secondary level, you need, in order for flexibility of scheduling and so forth, you generally, it's not a hard and fast rule, but you generally, we found that like 85% is a workable level. So particularly the elementary school and the high school are squeezed, let's say. Next one. So areas of concern. Although in some cases, like at the middle school, perhaps the projected utilization levels may appear to indicate there is adequate space to meet the educational needs of the K-12 enrollment, there are other factors to be considered, and those would be the numbers of shared teaching spaces. I have to tell you, I've never been in a district that had so many grade configuration sharing so many teaching spaces. An inadequate level of non-instructional common spaces, such as meeting rooms and like cafeteria and so forth that are available to students and staff, and inadequate support and storage spaces. And then we'll look a little further at that on the next slide. This shows you the numbers of shared teaching spaces within each school. So the elementary school has a total of 23 rooms. 19 are used solely by the elementary school, and 4 are shared with other, either the middle school or the high school. The middle school and the high school are where there's a significant overlap. As you can see, the middle school has 26 rooms, 12 used by the middle school, 14 that are shared. And the high school has 25 rooms, 17 used by the high school, and 12 shared with either and or the elementary school and middle school. And that is, those are very, very large numbers. And on the next slide, we'll look at some of the impact of the sharing and the space restrictions. One, of course, is limited scheduling flexibility. I have to say, I'm impressed with how well the administrative team works around this, but it does make for difficult and limited scheduling. Loss of instructional time, if teachers are sharing spaces and then they have to move from one space to another between classes and then don't have time to set up for the next class. Again, it's loss of instructional time. Security concerns as students from the high school move down to the other building. Limited collaboration among teaching staff because there are no meeting rooms or other spaces for the teaching staff to get together for planning purposes and collaboration. Limitations on the implementation of new programs to meet current standards of instruction. Also difficulty in meeting the needs of students requiring small group instructions or testing accommodations. And lastly, difficulties in scheduling parent meetings, board meetings, community events, things that in a lot of districts go on, but in Haldane, it's difficult because there are no spaces that the district can use to plan those sorts of events. So anyway, those are our findings. And as I said, I think the administrators do a great job of somehow managing to work with it all, but it's certainly not an optimum situation to move forward with new state ed requirements and recommendations and so forth. So questions?
Well, you know, I'm going to have a couple of questions. So if anybody else wants to pop in, you can do that.
I wanted to follow up with the, well, actually, this isn't a question about migration. It's a question about the displacement. I mean, I would think that under some circumstances, displacement could be a concern, right? Because you're saying, well, you have so many fewer children beginning kindergarten than graduating. But but if you look across multiple years, our displacement numbers aren't problematic because it really shows that there's this trend. Or maybe I'm not understanding exactly what displacement means, but normally I would think that if you were seeing this projection that you had so many fewer students starting than were graduating, you'd anticipate a significant impact on enrollment with there being a downward trend. But because we have students moving in, especially tuition students, that's not an issue for us. So just to look at our
Well,
displacement numbers by themselves could be a problem
you're right. It's just kind of
or
a
misleading, I guess.
that is one of the factors, because if you look strictly at some of the migrations, which in a number of cases are positive, you might say, well, wait a minute, why isn't enrollment growing? Because we're picking up students, in some cases from grade to grade, we're picking up the ninth grade students. Why isn't enrollment growing? Well, that's one of the reasons, is that, yes, by the time those students get to 12th grade, it's a larger cohort than is coming in again the next year. So not that it's a negative, it's just a point of information to show you the impact to the overall enrollment.
Thank you.
So
Nice.
go ahead. You go
So
first.
if we're anticipating the enrollment going down, why is it that the space is not big enough?
Well, first of all, enrollment is, although it's really more or less stabilizing. There is, yes, we are projecting a loss, but it's not a significant loss. Also, spaces, the district is very crammed as it is. So, and now there are new stated guidelines, more center-based teaching, maker spaces and so forth. So it's not that kids are kind of sitting in rows of desks like they were years ago. It's a different type of teaching now and instruction, which requires more space in some cases.
I think on one end, Margaret, too, just to interject, we're not losing enough kids to make use of open classrooms. So we're not going to lose enough to be able to retrofit classrooms or repurpose classrooms, in the way that we may desire to address some of those space needs. Yeah, just putting it, Barb, would that be accurate?
Yes,
right?
yes.
And now arbitrarily too, we could raise class sizes. And by doing so, we would get more classroom space that could be utilized in some areas, but that's not necessarily something that we would desire to do either.
But when did we build the high school? When was that? 2004. So since 2009, we've lost, projecting out to 2024, we've lost 140 students. And we have a new high school. Doesn't that seem counter?
I don't know. I couldn't speak to what, it looked like back then. And I could turn to the historian.
I can speak to that. I mean, Margaret, Margaret, remember, right? I mean, there were two bonds. The first bond didn't pass. It was for a high school with more buildings that included a cafeteria.
Right.
And when that didn't pass the following year, and remember that bond happened because the space needs were so huge. What we ended up with was a high school that was, really quite bare bones. I mean, all it has is classrooms. It doesn't have a library. It doesn't have a cafeteria. I guess Julia should speak to that too.
Yeah. Julia, you were here when they built the high school, right? So how cramped were we before we had those high school rooms?
We were cramped. Don't forget we had the modulars that we lost. And don't forget that upstairs in the annex was also classrooms. We lost some of those to offices. So, you know, I won't say that it's equal in terms of class spaces that we gained from the high school. I mean, we definitely gained a couple. Don't forget the library, the current library. That wall was 3 classrooms.
Oh, right.
We
Okay.
took that wall down. That was another classroom we lost. We lost a classroom when the elevator shafts were put in.
Right.
So
Got it.
we built this high school, and we really didn't gain many more classes
Got
because we
it.
lost modulars. We gained office space. We lost, you know, so.
In Mabel Merritt, there were, and we've gone back and forth between whether there were or weren't classes in Mabel Merritt, right?
There definitely were classes, more than there are
More than
now.
there are now.
Got it. Got it. So even though we're losing, so there's no mandate that they need more space. It's just the way things are taught is different. And even though we gained space, we actually lost space and it almost balanced itself out.
It sounds like, just by Julia's description, almost the space we gain is almost a wash with other space we've repurposed or lost.
Right.
Lost being like modulars, or lost being we put a library in place where 3 classrooms were.
Right.
You know, just kind of keeping a tally in my head as Julia was speaking, we don't have a lot of classrooms in our high school. So it almost sounds like it's kind of a wash between that repurposing or elimination of temporary space.
And I think also the number of students that have been lost, when you spread it out, it's really not highly significant. You know, in the high school, you spread it out over 4 grades and all the different curriculums. It's not a highly significant number.
Right. It's not so much where you're gaining classrooms on the other end.
Right.
Because it has to happen in, you know, at a certain point or at a certain grade level in order for it to equate to actually freeing up space in the school. Keep in mind, as we also expand elective offerings, now we have lower class sizes at the high school, and I've pointed to this in other discussions where maybe less than 18, but again, we want that elective. So you can't take just one section that's at 10 and another section at 10 because they're teaching different things and combine them and say, oh, you could have another room. If you combine those 2
Right.
classes, that's the nature of being a smaller district. But what Barb is pointing to, listen, we, on a day-to-day basis, our admin team makes it work. We have the rooms to put our children in for their core instruction, but it's a lot of the work that kind of surrounds that, the collaborative work, the breakout work. We do not have space, adequate space to do those things.
Yeah. John, did you have some questions you wanted to?
I did. I had sort of 2 buckets of questions. So the bucket of questions around population and population growth or shrinkage, and bucket of questions around facilities. So that's sort of the 2 chunks. Totally get the population, like this mirrors a trend demographically for the entire United States. My only question would be, does this assume a fixed housing stock within the district going forward?
I'm sorry, does this assume what again?
A fixed number of houses, or?
There is, we contact the local planning boards, and there is almost no new housing going on within the district. So yes.
Okay, yeah, because I remember that a couple of years ago, many years before I got on the board, there was a concern about, I think it's the black swan, quote unquote, chance of the location across from the quarry up 9 being developed into a large, massive, which is actually in Dutchess County, not our county, but yet in our district, having a potential significant impact on the district. I think that's only one thing we should be concerned about or just aware of.
We have not been seeing, as a generalization, we have been seeing those large-scale developments of, you know, a development of a number of 3 and 4 bedroom homes within the district. What we have been seeing are TOD developments, transit-oriented developments, which are geared toward, as they say, young professionals and empty nesters, you know, that are near downtowns, because the millennials supposedly, want, they want to be near the train station. They want to be within walking distance of bars and restaurants and so forth. So we really have not been seeing, and I would say with the current situation as it is, those kinds of developments are not going to be happening.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I don't think anybody's going to be building anything in the near future.
Yeah,
I think
unfortunately.
This was a different type of development entirely, not a 3 to 4 bedroom and not a urban millennial. It was a lower income, very simple housing complex being developed. And
Okay.
I think that that's the only substantial sort of fundamental change to the district that could happen in the future.
That could happen.
But so that was my one question. And on the facility side, could you go back to the capacity sort of utilization for kindergarten? Just because, yeah. So operational capacity of 322. So I noticed that over the past number of years that we have enrollment statistics, basically in every single situation, the capacity of the K through 5 elementary school, the number of students in K through 5 has been more than that back through at least the data that I have, 2009 or so. So I guess my question is, what has changed? Is this based on that 18 number? Or what has changed in terms of an assessment of operational capacity? Because I haven't heard either in my time before the board or my time now that we're bursting at the seams from K through 5 in terms of we don't have enough space to do what we need to do for an elementary school. And I'm looking at numbers that are even in 2006 was 405 students, which is 80 students above what you have there. So that's my question.
It could be, I'd have to, go back and study it a little more, but it could be that class sizes were a little bit larger.
Probably true, yeah.
Going back then. Again, we used 18 because that seems to be the average now. And
Right, to answer
that
John's
would be the
question,
average.
the 18 figure was used to calculate operational capacity. So if we had used 20 or 25,
the operational capacity
it would
goes up or down.
It goes up.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's a comfort level. At some level, it's a comfort level with what class size do we want, rather than how many classes is the facility able to support. Classrooms of students. Okay, got it.
Right.
There would be implications, John, if we had said it, let's just say at 30, because I've been a part of it. It would have the operational capacity would be higher. Obviously, 18 classrooms that we use at 30 each is, 540. That being said, there would be an implication then, do we have enough adequate bathroom spaces? Do we have enough adequate special area space? So there would be other implications for that. But I think, Barb's analysis seems to be, upon reading it and reviewing it with the administrators, certain parts of it, it does capture kind of on a day-to-day basis what our experience is, what our issues are, and what our issues are not.
And I think the subsequent step coming out of this, which is not a conversation for tonight, is, so what are the long-term implications? What are the long-term implications for both facilities and flexibility? Because that seems to be where we need to go, especially as a small district, and the implications for how do we think about population and class management. So, but those are not topics obviously for this evening. But thank you, I appreciate it.
Yeah, I feel like my summary of looking at this study, and thank you to Ms. Graziano for taking the time to walk us through it, would be that what we are currently experiencing is what we're probably going to keep experiencing, right? I mean, I feel like that's the gist for me, that this report has validated what we are currently experiencing, which is we don't have a lot of room. We don't have a lot of common space. Our students are cramped. Our teachers are sharing space, and we don't have a lot of room. And not nothing is really going to shift dramatically to change that unless, you know, we as a district decide to change that. So like by demographics and population, we're not going to see a huge increase of people where our situation is going to get worse. We're also not going to see a huge decrease of people where our situation is going to just naturally get a lot better. So that's kind of where I'm at with this. I thought it was really helpful and kind of validating to see, okay, where we currently are is where we're going to be ongoing. So we as a district need to decide, how do we work in that environment? Would that be accurate? Am I reading that correctly?
Yes, I think it would be. Yes, exactly. You have to, I think, as a district decide, do you want to make whatever changes could be proposed in order to more adequately address some of the concerns that are mentioned here? Or do you want to kind of maintain the status quo and work within the limitations that you have at the moment, which, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I know that I'm looking forward to having a conversation about the use of space with regard to our coherence, our strategic plan, because I feel like that really is going to frame the necessary questions moving forward to determine whether their learning spaces are, you know, as connected and purposeful, I suppose, as we need them to be. Because I think we all know that, you know, physical space is a deeply impactful tool for you know, fostering the connections between our whole community, our students, our teachers, and really the larger world of learning. And as whether it's mandated or otherwise, I think as our sense of how we want to begin fostering their education evolves, I think having flexible spaces to accommodate that are going to be key. So I look forward to framing those questions. And thank you so much, Barbara.
Are there any more questions for Ms. Graziano or Dr. Benante about the report? Okay, so I think we just say thank you, Ms. Graziano.
And if
for
any
your time.
questions
Thank you.
do arise, please feel free to email me. I will be happy to, answer any additional questions that may come up.
Thanks so much.
Thank you very
Barbara,
much.
Yeah,
Welcome.
thank you. We really
Have
enjoyed
a good
working with your
evening.
team.
Thank you.
You too. Okay, Jen, I'm just gonna stop.
Get that
share.
screen. Get that screen off my, I can't do anything. Okay, we're going into our information reports, and I'm so happy that our administrators are here almost in the flesh, in the cyberspace to talk us through. Andrew is not here, is that correct?
Andrew is not here.
Okay.
We'll get him. Don't
on
worry.
on his behalf, Ms. Sniffen, will you make sure you give a plug for the play this weekend, please? Okay, Ms. Jammin, would you like to give us your report?
All right, I am in. There are a lot of buttons. So in my board report, I talked a little bit about our transition. Our last in-person board report was before the school closure. So we've transitioned to our virtual learning. We've given out officially now, even since this, 3 Chromebook carts worth of Chromebooks to students who needed them at the elementary level. To ensure that they could access the learning. And our K2 students who didn't previously have logins and passwords to Google Classroom, because it wasn't a tool that we regularly used when we had them with us face-to-face at that level. Last week, we did roll out Google Classroom to them. And you know, that certainly comes with hiccups. 3rd grade rolled out with the start of new instruction, and they had used Google Classroom minimally, but they did use it in 3rd grade prior. But now everybody K-12 has access to Google Classroom. So I'll kudos to our K-3 teachers in getting that. We really hope that it minimizes the number of places that families need to go, and we're working on improving that too. There's learning curves for everybody with this transition. We are doing our learning asynchronously to make sure that it's equitable to our students and that they can access it even if they don't have availability at the times the teachers have availability. And we have been fostering leadership within our upper elementary students. They've been beginning to join me in the morning announcements, doing read-alouds for our younger students, and they have ideas about more ways to foster some of that community and for them to be leaders of that within the building. And we're having conversations planning for the rest of this year and next with our professional development and our TC Phonics pilot. Those are all things that we're on the plan for now, really. So we've postponed them slightly to adjust and put our attention on making sure our students have what they need and that our teachers have what they need. But those conversations aren't ending. We're now transitioning into both delivering virtual instruction and picking up those discussion topics of where will that phonics pilot go for next year? What professional development opportunities do we have for our teachers through Teachers College with the contract that we already had? Are there ways that we can fulfill that and support our teachers and their growth, and how do we do that? So those are conversations we're starting now.
Great, thank you. Dr. Seelke.
Good evening, everyone. I would like to dedicate my board report tonight to the middle school faculty. They are just, you know, there's really just not a word for how amazing they are. I wrote in my board report the details of the timeline of the transition to remote new learning online. So I just want to highlight the fact that one of the reasons that experience has been as smooth as it could be for our students and families is because of the initiative of the middle school faculty prior to any emergency occurring. So the middle school was well positioned to do what they needed to do in order to make the transition, meaning that, first of all, the mindset of the middle school faculty is whatever the students need, whatever they need to be successful. And that's number one. Also, we had a one-to-one Chromebook policy at the middle school, so all of our kids already had Chromebooks. They were already well-trained on using the Google suite of products, including Google Classroom. So there was a uniformity there that was already set up. And, you know, all of those pieces in place allowed a really situation that could have been really bumpy to be a lot smoother. And as soon as we rolled out, we also sought feedback purposefully, myself and the teams of teachers, from parents, so that we could right-size the delivery of new material and make things as consistent as possible for our kids and for our families. And I keep repeating to my faculty, thanking them for what they've done, and also letting them know that the yardstick for success is that continuity of learning and that consistency and connection. And I think that if we have that, and they have the heart and the relationships already with their students to do that, that will make it through this terrible time.
Thank you. Julia Sniffen.
Sure. Just to kind of piggyback on what Marianne said, the same for the high school for the most part. We did not have a one-to-one initiative. So we did hand out just under 20 Chromebooks to high school students. Most students do have their own devices, as we've been using the Google Classroom platform for quite some time. So that transition was quite seamless. Again, thanks to the hard work and dedication of the teachers. I do have to commend the teachers just on a different piece too, is navigating, are we in review? Are we in new instruction? As the high school was in a different place with that, and different classes we're doing different things. So we have partnerships, I think, as many of you know, with 4 different universities and colleges in our region. And each of those colleges and universities are doing something different. So our teachers are navigating what are the policies within the universities, how does that impact our students. We have a grading policy that we've put out for Haldane, but it might not clearly align with what these outside institutions are doing. We have requests from outside professors wanting to zoom into their classrooms just to be sure that the continuity of learning is happening. So I just, like Marianne, I just want to thank the teachers for their flexibility. They're doing what's in the best interest of our students day in and day out. And following the Regents timeline and the AP timeline, which AP testing is still happening. Parents are going to get tired of seeing so many emails from me about AP exams, but the target keeps changing and the information keeps changing. We try to hold off on sending it out, but at the same time, we don't want people to miss things. So, but I'm going to shift from that because there's a lot still going on in the high school that we want to celebrate and make sure you are aware of. Internships are happening. Most of them are happening virtually. We have a lot of high school teachers that are pairing up with middle school and elementary teachers, kind of taking a shift in their internship and instead helping teachers through this process with younger students. So I want to thank the Melissa Seidman in her work with that. I think most of you saw a big congratulations to Bridget Goldberg, our valedictorian, and to Annika Chan, our salutatorian. And those announcements are posted on the website in different places. And I know the local papers are working on getting that information out as well. And a big thank you to everybody involved in Fiddler on the Roof. This weekend, thanks to Carolyn Copeland, Damian McDonald, Martha and Jim Mekalakis, they have worked on the platform to have a live viewing available for 24 hours. So anybody that is watching, we will blast out the information again tomorrow. Our goal is to hit the $10,000 mark. We are at $8,000 right now in funds secured. And I want to say, they said that we're just at, I want to say over 200 ticket sales. I could be wrong on that, but I keep getting updates. So I think that covers it.
And Julie, I
Great.
just wanted to mention, we're encouraging people to send that out to friends and family
Share.
members. You have friends in another state who are fans of Fiddler, share it with them Friday night. They can watch it. Proceeds go to Haldane Drama. So
It's a great opportunity,
feel free to spread
actually,
it.
for family members that aren't local
Right.
to be able to see their family perform.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Carolyn Copeland, just a shout out to her and her connections with MTI, because this is kind of, you know, it's tough to get the approval to do something like this, you know, the legal parameters to make it happen. So I just want to thank our local community members who are involved in theater that helped us in making this happen too.
The PDF that someone put together that talked through all the work that goes into the production,
That was Damien.
That was really, it was very informative. It was really very interesting. I appreciated that.
That was Damien McDonald.
Just as a question, do you know whether it's going in the paper? Any of the papers?
I know the Highlands Current put it out on social media today.
Okay.
I did see that.
Great.
They had it in their digital version as well.
Right.
I read a digital
Right.
article on it.
Margaret, it looked like you were trying to say something, but you might have been muted. Did you want to say something?
I was trying to move the video before because when I lost power, I had to go get the cord, but I could see you watching me fool around. No, the article that was written that clearly stated how much it costs to do this for all the different things, that was really brilliant and really informative for you know, for people who don't do that all the time, to understand how much each of those things cost is really important on a high school level for someone to know, yeah, you know, we're charging you to come in and see a high school show, but this is how much it really costs to put it on even at the high school level. So you said that was Damien?
Damien put that together. Yeah.
Yeah, so thank Damien for that.
Nice. Okay. Miss Tara Rounds.
Oh, actually, so,
Oh, I'm sorry. Did you have something to say?
no, I'll wait until, I did want to make a comment after Tara says so.
Okay.
Good evening. I just wanted to highlight from my board report that what the PPS department is doing during this time of distance learning. I'm so proud of this department and so impressed by what they're doing, the different things they're trying, the new platforms that they're working on, new methodologies that they're using. Since the beginning, every time we talked about how to support our students, they said, okay, we can do that. Okay, I'll try that, and jumped right in. So I'm just so impressed. They're connecting and they're supporting our students, and our PPS department, as you know, is K through 12. So depending on the grade level and the type of class that they're teaching in, they've been using a variety of ways to connect with our students. They're modifying work and planning assignments. They're collaborating with co-teachers to have the assignments really in line with student goals. They're providing office hours for answering questions. They're providing opportunities for reteaching skills, and they're using pre-recorded mini lessons for specific areas of need, such as reading. So they're really, they've just been so flexible and really trying all new ways to support our students and being pretty successful in all of their endeavors. They're going above and beyond. One example is a teacher bringing materials and dropping them off at a few students' doorsteps that she thought that the hard copies would be better for them and for the particular assignment she was giving. Our related service providers as well have embarked on a brand new journey using teletherapy, which is quite a challenge if you've never done teletherapy before. And they have jumped right in. We're doing, for our students with IEPs, we're doing OT, PT, speech, and counseling using audiovisual platforms such as Google Meet. And it's been a learning experience for everyone. One of our speech language pathologists, I talked to her today, and she was so happy to say I had 100% participation last week. So, that's another piece of this, is that our providers are reaching out constantly to students. It's not like when they walk into the classroom where they go down the hall to get their students for a therapy session. There's the student, if they're not signing in, if they're not accessing meetings, they're reaching out, they're emailing, they're calling, they're, talking to our counselors, ask them for assistance in reaching out. So they're really being resourceful during this time. Speaking of our counselors, it's been a very stressful time for many, and we are all experiencing many different emotions, and our counselors have been proactive in providing resources and check-ins for families in need, as well as continuing with direct counseling for students with social and emotional goals on their IEPs. So our counselors continue to be a support in time of crisis, and they're available to help with any student at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Salem.
So good evening, everyone. Can you guys hear me okay? My connection is a little spotty.
Little jumpy.
Yeah.
Jumpy.
I'm gonna have to shut my video, my apologies. So I just wanted to thank the Haldane Physical Education Department for creating our community-wide theory class week virtually. For those of you that participated, please check the Haldane Physical Education Department's Twitter account. It was great to see so many videos and pictures from our family being active and doing different activities that promote community within our community during this difficult time. I also just want to highlight that the Haldane Hall of Fame is taking submissions for the class of 2020. Please send any of your nominations to me at csolemn@haldaneschool.org. And then last, I just wanted to highlight or remind everyone during this difficult time, just try to stay active. Being physically active is obviously important for our mental state. Try to take time daily to do different fitness activities, everything your physical education teachers sending out, or you may find on the internet. A lot of activities can be done at home with very little equipment. Make sure you're practicing social distancing while you're doing these activities. So, those are the two things that I want to highlight. Thank you. Hope it was clear enough.
I think the last part might have broke out for Mr. Salem a little bit, but thank you, Mr. Salem. I think I caught some of that and appreciate the encouragement for folks to stay active at this time and the importance of that for managing stress and overall just it being a proactive thing to do for our own wellness. So thanks, Chris, for that reminder.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, Mr. Welsh.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Facilities department has really been working in a limited capacity, or reduced capacity. We still have several individuals on site every day conducting rounds, making sure buildings are safe, making sure that they're still secured. We are providing access to everyone who needs it, making sure that we're disinfecting behind them, anyone who's in the buildings to access materials or Chromebooks, making sure that we're disinfecting behind the cafeteria staff as they prepare lunches. We'll continue to do that as the longer we're closed and the longer this closure continues. We're starting to look at making sure our preventative maintenance processes and our schedules, as well as like our grounds maintenance, still continues. Make sure that we're still continuing with those schedules and making things that those things that need to happen do happen. And along with any regulatory agency inspections that we have, like the DOT for our school buses, we're making sure that those PMs occur, making sure that we're staying up on those items. We're still looking at our summer schedules for summer work and summer cleaning. We had a meeting with some of our suppliers earlier as they indicated to us that some supplies are a little bit harder to get, a little more lead time to get. So we're starting to take inventory of the things that we do have, make sure that we have enough lead time for our ordering processes, make sure that they're on site for the summer cleaning and the summer work, given the conditions that we have currently. But that's all. Please let me know if you have any questions.
Thank you. And, you know, I'll take this opportunity to thank all of you administrators for all of your hard work. You haven't been here at our Zoom meetings, but the board has been consistently appreciative of all of your creativity and flexibility and resilience. And we are very grateful to have all of you as our team leaders. And I think it makes a really big difference to keep our Haldane community thriving during this difficult time. So thank you all for your work. And go ahead.
I wanted to really thank the administrators for acknowledging the focus and all the work that they and the teachers are doing regarding student social and emotional well-being, and how that, you know, I mean, my reading of the reports was that focus, you know, is really front and center along with academics, and I really appreciated reading all of those updates in your report. So thank you very much for the work and for including that. It was such an important part of what you all wrote, I thought.
Thank you. Okay, moving on. So communication from the public. So if there's anyone listening that would like to communicate with us, you can do so via chat, and we will review those chats later at our second communication from the public part of the meeting. Going into consent agenda, may I have a motion, please?
Motion.
Second.
These are the minutes from the April 14th meeting. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Consent agenda financial. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Consent agenda personnel. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
This is the extension of the probationary period for one of our employees. Do I need to read anything on that? No, I guess it's just consent agenda. Okay, may I have a motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Going into unfinished business, the 2020-21 school budget discussion. So Dr. Benante, I'll turn that over to you for any
Nothing
comments?
more beyond what I said earlier, and just for us to keep an eye on the discussion that's occurring at the state level for potential reductions in school-based aids. And that's something the governor's talked a little bit more about this week. And I know through NYSBA and also on our end through NISCUS, I'm starting to see a lot of advocacy alerts come my way regarding that. So I would encourage our board members, if you feel so inclined, like I saw the NYSBA one today, to call our local legislators and or our congressmen to advocate for aid to our schools. Please feel free to do so. And just so you know, I sit on Senator Sue Serino's educational advisory panel with some other educators from our region. So she has called and scheduled a meeting for next Tuesday. And Senator Serino typically will do this prior to things occurring at a state level. So I look forward to representing Haldane at that meeting next week. And I think there'll be some more information coming our way. So we'll see how the next couple of weeks play out, and hopefully, for the better. I'm happy to answer any other questions that folks may have had from last week. But other than that, I don't have any other new information to present.
Are there any follow-up questions or comments for Dr. Benante? Pretty much nothing has changed. Just if anybody had any follow-up thoughts. And as Dr. Benante said, well, I guess the only thing that has changed is that we have an expectation that on April 30th, the governor will be giving us some significant information about our state aid expectations, and that may or may not impact our budget. But yeah, go ahead, Doctor.
Yeah, I just want to mention, so the 30th ends the measurement period. I should have clarified this. And usually it takes a week or so to understand what may result from that measurement period. Is that correct?
The legislature has 10 days to make
10 days.
Any changes. So after that 10-day window ends, if there's no changes, then we will get the information after that time.
So just so you have a sense for the timeline and how that works.
Thank you. That was important to know.
So are we still looking at May 5th?
We may recommend pushing it back to May 19th, depending on what we're hearing at that time. So if you had asked me 2 days ago, Ann, I don't know, we would have said May 5th, but then we were talking just this afternoon and we said it may benefit us to wait till May 19th. So as to, actually, it may benefit the board to wait till May 19th. We don't want to have you act on something on Tuesday and then on Wednesday get information, and we want to take it back in some way. So let us. We'll continue to monitor this over the next couple of weeks.
And the timeline really is just different than it's been. The calendar is just so different because we still don't know the timeline or the process for adopting. I mean, there's the board adopting the budget, but then for passing the budget, right?
Correct. So for us, it's more of a we're encouraging a timeline for communication purposes on the other end of it. Now, again, we want to make sure whatever we start to communicate, we're on really firm ground with it. So that's the variable right now.
Right. And by law, we must have a budget in place. I mean, obviously, for the start of I mean, I would like by July 1st, one would assume.
Under normal circumstances, that would be the case.
But I've heard some things this week too about usually there's a notification window, however many days notice we usually give, and that being modified. You know, they're still out there whether we'll go to a municipal model, although the governor's office seems to really want to make sure a vote occurs. But even absentee ballots were coming up again today. So, you know, I think it's all up in the air, Peggy. I think a lot of it is going to be determined by how the virus diminishes, hopefully, over these next few weeks. Again, signs are still encouraging that it's doing so, but we don't know.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so if everybody's good with budget for the moment, we'll go into strategic coherence planning. Update.
So at our next meeting, I'd like to provide an overview of the coherence planning process, and I'd like that'll be our final report. If there are no questions or if there is not a desire for the board for us to go back and readdress something. So you had the enrollment study tonight. At our next meeting, I'd like to go through an overview with the coherence plan, and that'll be the final report on that process to the board this school year, if all goes well.
And will we be also being asked to adopt it on May 5th, or would that be another?
I'm going to stagger it. So the enrollment study, I'm going to ask the board to endorse its findings at our next meeting. At the next meeting, I'll present the coherence plan, and then at the meeting following that, I'll ask the board to adopt the coherence plan. Then that would be at the May 19th meeting.
Got it.
So I'm trying to stagger it. Information provided, action the following meeting.
Yep,
that's
sense.
my logic. And Jen, I'll continue to work with you if you feel that there's more. If you want to take a different approach to that, obviously we'll talk.
No, that makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then on the capital referendum, Tim's still here. Tim, probably be best, the information you provided me this afternoon, we went through, if you wouldn't mind, can you give the board the same overview?
Sure. We, a previous board meeting, we entered into an agreement with DeRosa Sports Construction for site improvements at Haldane. It's our understanding that, school construction was deemed essential. So we're progressing as if we're still going to do the work over the summer. DeRosa Sports is currently providing all their contracted documentation to the district architect, Fuller and D'Angelo, all their submittals, schedule values, the schedule for the work for Fuller to review and either approve or disapprove. So we're still progressing as if construction is going to start right now. It's scheduled to start on June 29th and finish early August. So we're still progressing and on schedule to meet that schedule.
Great. Okay, I think we can go into new business. CSE, CPSE recommendations. May I have a motion, please?
So moved. Second.
Ms. Platt, would you like to read them?
Be it resolved that upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, the Board of Education hereby approves the recommendations of the Committees on Special Education and Preschool Special Education as presented.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Approval of the resolution for the Putnam Northern Westchester Boces budget. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Platt?
Yes, and I just want to remind us we need a roll call vote at the end of this one.
Thank you.
Be it resolved that upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, the Board of Education hereby approves the following resolution. Whereas the Board of Cooperative Educational Services of Putnam, Northern Westchester County, thereinafter Boces, has proposed its tentative administrative budget for the 2020-2021 school year, July 1st, 2020 through June 30th, 2021. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Boces tentative administrative budget for the 2020-2021 school year in the amount of $9,637,111 be and hereby is approved by the board.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Do you need discussion first? Sorry.
Is there any discussion? Okay, go ahead.
Okay. President Daly?
Yes.
Vice President Headland?
Yes.
Trustee Clements?
Yes.
Trustee McNow?
Yes.
Trustee Parr?
Yes.
Okay. The PNW BOCES trustees candidates. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Platt?
Be it resolved that upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, the Board of Education hereby casts a vote to fill the 3 vacancies on the Putnam Northern Westchester BOCES Board of Cooperative Educational Services for the period July 1st, 2020 through June 30th, 2023 from the following 3 candidates: Mary Kay Nilsson from Brewster, New York, Jennifer Rosen, Briarcliff Manor, New York, and Richard Krebs, Carmel, New York.
Is there any discussion? We thank these 3 individuals for their service. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, communication from the public. I didn't see any chats come in. Ms. Platt, did I miss any?
No, nothing now. No.
Great, okay. So we'll go into the, so this is our new trial here. We talked about putting in board committee reports just so we could keep everybody updated. So we have our policy committee update. Maybe I'll just turn it over to you. Peggy, would you like to give the board an update on our current progress?
Yes. So we've completed, I guess, the first round of an initial review. Basically, Jen and I, because of all the things that were going on in the district right now, Jen and I took over completing the review of the full budget that we received from Erie Boces earlier this year. Again, just to remind everybody, the focus right now is making sure that all the requested changes were made, as well as updating policies that now need or require some board customization. I'm putting that all together so that we can review it efficiently with Phil and sometime next week. And then we'll send it back to them. And yes, I mean, yeah, we're in the swing of things.
Yeah, that's all there really is to report.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the number 2 is the Westchester Putnam School Boards Association. I felt like, you know, I'm there on Haldane's behalf, so I wanted to make sure I was always updating you guys on what was happening. I did send out recently, I think, the summary from last week's town hall call. Those calls happen weekly, and I'll be honest, there have been moments in my involvement in Westchester Putnam that I've wondered what the purpose is, because NYSBA does so much of what they do, right? NYSBA offers advocacy, NYSBA offers professional development for boards, and Westchester Putnam has always said, well, we're different because we're local. And I've always struggled with that a little bit. You know, I wasn't really sure how needed it was. And then during this crisis, just to see the way that this organization has pulled the Westchester Putnam districts together and really advocated for their needs and created a community for people to talk. And I all of a sudden see the purpose and the idea that being local has a purpose. So I've been really valuing their service. So I'll just continue to send you guys summaries of their calls. I know John has hopped on a couple as well, and they are advocating for all of our questions about what happens with the budget, what happens with the Board of Education elections, what happens, when do we reopen, all of those questions that we all have. That's basically what they're talking to their legislators, our legislators, about as often as possible to try to get answers to. So, and then they push out the answers as soon as they get them. So it's been helpful. Okay, so that's that. Board reflections. Does anyone have anything they'd like to share? Okay, Dr. Benante, do you have any final thoughts you would like to share? I can't hear you.
Sorry. I just want to extend my appreciation to you and Peggy for your work on the policy committee or on policy over the last couple of weeks. And I feel like, you know, that process is such an undertaking and has been over the last two years or year plus now. So the fact that we're at a point where we finish now the review of the draft that has been provided to us is significant. So
and really, it's Peggy that deserves that. I'm just along for the ride. Peggy is driving that train.
Peggy totally undersold the undertaking that is, and it's been. I really appreciate your flexibility over the last few weeks because it's, as you know, I like to attend, and having the two of you address that has been a great help to me personally, and I look forward to the point where we can put the whole manual in front of the board and say, enjoy your weekend reading.
Well, that's not how it's going to work this time. No. I guess actually the one thing I would say, well, first of all, thank you. I will say that when Phil, Jen, and I were meeting in person last spring, because we did the first pass through, I think I was often the taskmaster that would also often bring us back to the policies. Anyway,
there's a lot of rabbit holes to go down with policy.
There are, and the one thing actually, I think I'm going to go ahead actually, I think, and just put this out before the board. One of the things, well, I'm going to say this, and then people will have it in the back of their minds, and then when it comes up again, it won't be a surprise. So one of the things that we've done in this interim while we've been working with Erie Boces to do a full manual audit and get a whole new updated policy manual is periodically we needed to adopt some policies that were state mandated. So like the sexual harassment for staff was one, and sexual harassment for students. And in that timeline, we took the policies that that Mike Lambert's office gave us, which came from NYSSBA. So it was NYSSBA's policies. And so the one thing I think that Phil will hear us talk about when we talk about next week, and I think for the board to know, is one of the things that I think is going to be important for us to do moving forward is to, as much as possible, take advantage of our I know why we didn't do it in the past, but as much as possible to really take advantage of the policies and the information that we receive regularly from Erie Boces, like whoever works on this, you know, in the years to come, because then we're best positioned for them to help us keep all of our policies up to date. So anyway, I mean, I think we're going to be in a really good position. Like once we're able to finish this policy manual audit and accept this new policy manual, I mean, the board's going to be in a great place. We're going to have a policy manual that's searchable, that's up to date. We're developing practices and protocols for how we make the changes, how we track the changes, how we follow up on any changes we get back from Erie Boces. So I do think we'll be in a good place, and we're really getting there. So I know it's been important. Yeah. It's taken longer than expected because it took a while for Erie Boces to get it back to us, but we're going to be in a really good place. So. We
will be, and it's it's like maintenance work, you know. It's similar to board retreats and other things. You know, it'd be easy not to do them and to take for granted, you know, that we just get it or it's happening, or fall back on our former policy manual. But this maintenance work that we're doing is really important, and I think the board has seen how some of the things we do on the proactive end really do pay dividends down the road, especially when you're under stress or your system's under a little bit of stress like we are now. So just again, I want to extend appreciation to the both of you for your help in that process. I don't have any other remarks for now, Jen.
Okay. Then I'd like to make a motion to adjourn. May I have a second, please?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, good night,
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for attending. Really appreciate it.